We're here in the crowd, and there are two military vehicles that are trying to get out of here. We're just a few blocks away from the National Assembly. There were some soldiers that were saying their military vehicles are trying to leave the area and get back to their base. Protesters, of course, voicing their huge outrage and dismay at this moment. Local police with shields around us. We're gonna move a couple steps away.
Protests outside South Korea's parliament after the president imposed martial law across the country, only to lift it 6 hours later.
Imagine waking up to a late-night announcement that your president has declared martial law on the grounds of defending your democracy. It sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's happening right now in South Korea. A leader pushed to the brink by scandal and protest made a desperate move that shocked the world. Welcome to the Revo Report. I'm Vince Revo. Let's break this down.
I declare martial law to protect the Free Republic of Korea from the threat of North Korean communist forces.
South Korea's president declared martial law, basically in the middle of the night, effectively accusing the opposition of trying to destroy the country from within.
I have to stress that this is a shocking development. Nobody expected that.
We understand that it would prohibit political activity.
Protests are prohibited and the media is censored.
It was a complete shock. I don't think any Koreans would accept that.
It will definitely eradicate the anti-state forces who are the main culprit of the country's ruination and conduct vicious activities.
And then, almost as quickly as the declaration had been made, Parliament, including members of the president's own party, pulled the rug out from under him, reversing the call.
South Korean lawmakers were able to convene tonight and vote unanimously.
Martial law and military rule declared by President Yoon earlier in the day have now been lifted.
A lot of people are scratching their heads, and there's a big question mark. Why did the president, made this, announcement?
Number one, a shocking move in the dead of night. At nearly midnight, South Korea's President Yoon Suk Yeol declared martial law, citing the need to protect the nation from so-called communist forces. What does that even mean? Well, in Yoon's mind, anyone opposing his presidency is a North Korean sympathizer. The reality is much simpler. His approval rating have plummeted to the 20% range, probably even lower now. Corruption scandals are piling up, and his political opponents have been calling for his impeachment for months. So, this declaration feels less like a move to protect the people and more like an act of desperation to protect his crumbling presidency.
Well, Rahul, we now have this ban, this declaration of martial law that has been overturned by Parliament. Will Ripley, our colleague in Taipei, was just saying it should take a simple majority of Parliament to overturn this, and that has happened within the past 2 to 3 minutes. Applause breaking out in the National Assembly. We're headed there now, but certainly a feeling of palpable apprehension of demonstrators trying to get to the National Assembly. We're seeing members of the military, law enforcement in their green camouflaged helmets and uniforms. And we had reports that these members of law enforcement were trying to stop members of the National Assembly from coming into the building to overturn this declaration of martial law. But enough members managed to get in. Again, 1:06 a.m. here in Seoul, and members of the National Assembly have overturned martial law in South Korea minutes ago. So now the question is, what does South Korea's president do now that lawmakers have overturned martial law in South Korea across the country? He did this as a way to reclaim power. He is a very weak president. His approval ratings hovering in the upper 20%. Conservative figure known in this country for decades as a strong prosecutor, as somebody who has taken a strong stance against North Korea and aggression coming from north of the DMZ. And he did this, as far as we can tell, because there have been unending calls to impeach him, to remove him from office. And he said in an address to the nation a few hours ago that this was his way of strengthening control of government, which he said has been paralyzed by these calls for his impeachment and calls to impeach other members of the government, heads of ministries that he installed as well.
The immediate fallout, the backlash, was swift and loud. Thousands of South Koreans poured into the streets waving flags and chanting for his resignation. Parliament didn't waste time either. They voted unanimously to block the martial law decree. Even members of Yoon's own Conservative Party condemned the move, calling it unconstitutional and reckless. This wasn't just a misstep. It was a catastrophic failure of leadership. And what's even more stunning is how unprepared Yoon seemed for the fallout. Did he really think his people would stand for this? Now let's talk about what martial law actually entails.
Yoon sparked the political crisis when he abruptly declared martial law late Tuesday, only to scrap that order under pressure a few hours later. Now, his defense minister and a number of other top officials have submitted resignations. Protesters, meantime, clashing with troops outside the parliament building after that emergency order was announced. And we also have video of a lawmaker arguing with a soldier, which has gone viral. Take a look. You'll see why. As you saw there, she tried to grab the soldier's rifle before walking away. She was shouting, "Aren't you embarrassed?" Just hours after, meantime, South Korea's president plunged the country into political uncertainty. Life actually appears to be carrying on as usual. That's what we're hearing from CNN's Ivan Watson, who's been out there speaking with lawmakers in Seoul.
In fact, a member of the president's own political party told me he doesn't see how it's possible that President Yoon can continue to govern after the fiasco of the last 12 hours, where he declared martial law. There were soldiers that tried to prevent lawmakers from gathering in the middle of the night in the National Assembly, and yet they did. They voted, 190 of them, to overturn the martial law, and that included 18 lawmakers from the president's own party. And then before dawn this morning, the president backtracked and lifted martial law. It lasted around 6 hours. So now what we have is the opposition calling for his resignation.
In South Korea's context, it's a relic of its military dictatorship era. Political activities are banned, media is restricted, and in theory, the military gains control of civilian governance. But here's the kicker. South Korea's democracy has come too far to let this stand. For decades, the country has been a beacon of democracy in East Asia, a stark contrast in North Korea's authoritarian regime. This attempt to roll back the clock to the 1980s isn't just misguided, it's insulting to the millions of South Koreans who fought for their freedom. Number 4, why this matters beyond South Korea.
This candlelit cam followed a night of chaos. They gathered on the steps of the parliament with one aim, to call for the impeachment of their president who declared martial law.
Because we have a history of defending democracy a few times, the people will strongly defend democracy once more.
I'm out here as a citizen who could not sit by and watch the democracy breaking down.
Resign, the group chanted before their Mexican wave. Such a different scene from last night's turmoil. Just hours after President Yoon plunged his country into martial law, soldiers broke through the windows of Parliament to prevent elected members from overturning the decree. They were unsuccessful, and after 6 hours, Seoul's Parliament, not just its president, were back in control. Today, the building bore the scars of that struggle. Repairs have already begun. Protests sprung up in other parts of the city as South Koreans took a moment to reflect. The prospect of martial law brought back chilling memories of authoritarian rule.
South Koreans value their democracy. They fought for it, some died for it. And although they may be questioning just how robust it may be, they've turned out in their thousands to protect it.
But for now, President Yoon remains in power.
This isn't just about one country, it's about a growing global trend. Leaders under fire often resort to extreme measures to hold onto power, whether it's through emergency decrees, censorship, or in this case, martial law. We've seen similar patterns worldwide, and it's a stark reminder of how fragile democracy can be. If a leader in a country as advanced and democratic as South Korea can attempt this, what's stopping others? Number 5, the role of public outrage. Now, here's the good news. The people aren't standing for it. The protests in South Korea are a powerful example of what happens when citizens refuse to be silenced. They remind us that democracy isn't just about elections, it's about holding leaders accountable every single day. In a world that often feels divided, the South Korean people are united in their message. Their democracy is non-negotiable. And here's what we can all learn from this.
It took South Korea by surprise. Obviously, North Korea took the Pentagon, State Department, White House. Nobody was expecting this. And it was real. That martial law went into effect immediately. And as you said, banning protests, any kind of political dissent, taking control of the media. And it lasted for a fair few hours because, yes, the parliament came in, as many as could, because this is late at night, early in the morning. About 190 of 300-something came in. By unanimous decision, reversed that. But apparently under South Korean law, they may reverse it. It's then up to the president to go ahead and accept that reversal. And about 6 hours later, he said, okay, we'll agree to take that order back. So
democracy isn't guaranteed. It's earned and protected by the vigilance of its citizens. Proverbs 31:8 says, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. That's exactly what the people of South Korea are doing right now. So what can you do? Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep speaking. Your voice matters, and together we can ensure that leaders everywhere are held to account. God bless you.